Hey everyone, welcome back to Alexa Bliss TV. If you're new here, I'm Alexa, and this channel is where we break down the stories that actually matter, the ones that go way deeper than the headlines. And today, we have a big one. We're talking about a $6 billion bridge, nearly finished, connecting Windsor, Canada to Detroit, Michigan, that Donald Trump is now threatening to block before it even opens. A bridge that Canada almost entirely paid for. A bridge that carries a quarter of all U.S.-Canada trade through its corridor. A bridge that could determine the future of North American manufacturing. And caught right in the middle of this? Mark Carney, Canada's crisis manager, who just broke his silence and sent a message to Washington that was far more powerful than it sounded on the surface. This story has tariffs, leverage, auto industry supply chains, alliance politics, and a warning that should have every Western nation paying close attention. So make sure you subscribe right now if you haven't already. Hit that bell too, because stories like this drop all the time and you do not want to miss them. And when we're done, I want to hear your take in the comments. Whose side are you on? Drop it below. Let's get into it.
Discussed the bridge. I explained that Canada, of course, paid for the construction of the bridge, over $4 billion, that the ownership is shared between the state of Michigan and the government of Canada, and that in the construction of the bridge, obviously there's Canadian steel, Canadian workers, but also U.S. steel, U.S. workers that were involved. This is a great example of cooperation between our countries. Look forward to it opening. And what is particularly important, of course, is the commerce and the tourism and the voyages of Canadians and Americans that will go across that.
Let's start with the basics. Because the Gordie Howe International Bridge is not just any bridge. This is a next-generation trade corridor connecting Windsor, Ontario to Detroit, Michigan, and it is on the verge of opening its doors to traffic. Named after the legendary hockey icon, this structure represents one of the most ambitious cross-border infrastructure projects in modern North American history. Now, here's the part that makes this story so explosive. Canada funded the overwhelming majority of this project. We're talking billions in public money from Ottawa, including significant investment in infrastructure on the American side of the border. Canada didn't do this out of generosity alone. They did it strategically. In geopolitical terms, Canada wasn't just building a bridge. It was buying long-term insurance on the stability of continental trade, a calculated bet on North America's industrial future. And it was almost complete. The structure was set to open this year. And then, the shockwave hit. Donald Trump blindsided everyone when he signaled that the United States could block or delay the bridge's opening, floating it as leverage in broader negotiations with Canada over trade disputes and border security demands. Now, let's be clear about what this threat actually means, because it's subtle, but it's devastating. Trump isn't talking about tearing the bridge down. The structure is nearly complete. The leverage isn't physical. It's bureaucratic. Federal permits, customs authorizations, security certifications. Only Washington can grant those. And without them, that bridge, no matter how complete it looks, doesn't move a single truck, doesn't flow a single shipment. It exists physically, but not economically. In strategic language, this is called choke point control. You don't need to own an asset if you control access to it, and Trump has just demonstrated that even a bridge Canada paid for can be turned into a bargaining chip with the right pressure applied at the right pressure point. He also demanded the U.S. be fully compensated, claiming the bridge was built without American materials. That claim is being contested, but the real message wasn't about materials. It was a flex, a signal that no deal is safe until Washington says it's safe. Canada's response didn't come in the form of angry press conferences or counter threats. Instead, Ottawa deployed someone far more calculated, Mark Carney. For those who don't know him, Carney is a former central banker who guided economies through some of the worst financial crises of the modern era. He doesn't do theatrical politics, he does strategic communication. And when he finally broke his silence on this bridge dispute, his words carried multiple layers of meaning. On the surface, Carney stated the obvious. Canada financed this project with billions in public money, and blocking it would mean obstructing infrastructure largely paid for by an ally. But then he reframed the economic consequences in a way designed to make Washington think twice. He pointed out that American steel built this bridge. U.S. workers helped construct it. Michigan's economy is tied to it. Any blockade wouldn't just hurt Canada, it would punch American industries and American workers directly in the face. And beneath all of that diplomatic language was a sharper, quieter signal. Weaponizing shared infrastructure damages the trust inside the North American alliance framework at the exact moment the Western world is already under enormous global pressure. Canada wasn't just defending a bridge, it was warning that some moves have consequences that outlast any single negotiation. To understand why this standoff matters so deeply, you have to understand just how tightly integrated U.S.-Canada manufacturing actually is. Nearly a quarter of all U.S.-Canada trade flows through the Windsor-Detroit corridor, and a massive chunk of that is tied to the auto industry. Ford, General Motors, Stellantis. These companies don't just ship finished cars across the border. They operate deeply interconnected cross-border production systems where a single vehicle might require parts crossing that corridor 5 or 6 times before the car is even fully assembled. Think about that. One vehicle, dozens of border crossings during production. Now imagine that flow gets delayed, even briefly. Assembly lines stall, costs explode, deliveries fall behind. Billions in economic activity can freeze within weeks. The Gordie Howe Bridge was specifically designed to prevent exactly that kind of bottleneck. For decades, this corridor has been dominated by the privately owned Ambassador Bridge, aging infrastructure running at capacity. The Gordie Howe Bridge was meant to add modern processing and publicly governed capacity to a corridor that desperately needed it. So when Trump threatens to block this bridge, he's not threatening a ribbon-cutting ceremony. He's threatening the operational core of North America's industrial engine. Here's the angle most people are completely missing, and it might actually be the most important part of this whole story. For decades, cross-border trade in the Windsor-Detroit region has depended heavily on private infrastructure control, specifically the Ambassador Bridge, owned by a single private entity. One private company with enormous influence over one of the most critical trade corridors on the planet. The Gordie Howe Bridge changes that equation entirely. It introduces publicly governed capacity into a corridor that was effectively a private monopoly. And that redistribution of logistical power has profound implications that go way beyond just adding a second crossing. Control trade routes and you influence tariffs, tolls, and traffic flows. Influence those flows and you shape industrial geography itself. This bridge isn't just new infrastructure, it's a restructuring of Continental Commerce Authority, shifting control from private hands to public governance. That's part of why this moment is so loaded. There are powerful interests tied to how that corridor operates, and a publicly funded bridge is about to change the power dynamics of one of the world's most valuable trade corridors. No wonder it's become a geopolitical flashpoint. Let's talk consequences. Because if this opening is blocked or significantly delayed, the cascade would be fast and brutal. Auto manufacturing takes the first hit, but it doesn't stop there. Logistics firms reroute at higher cost. Energy and agricultural exports slow down. Insurance and freight pricing spikes. Legal disputes could erupt under continental trade agreements, with Canada potentially seeking major damages over obstructed access to infrastructure it financed. Diplomatically, the damage could last even longer. Using shared infrastructure as a negotiating weapon reframes U.S.-Canada relations from cooperative integration to transactional bargaining. That might sound like a subtle shift, but it is a profound change in alliance psychology. Once your ally starts treating shared economic lifelines as pressure tools, you stop thinking like partners and start thinking like rivals. And zoom out even further. This dispute reflects a global pattern that is accelerating rapidly. Infrastructure, ports, pipelines, bridges, data cables is increasingly being treated as geopolitical leverage. From energy corridors in Europe to shipping lanes in Asia, physical connectivity is now part of strategic competition. The Gordie Howe standoff proves that even the world's most historically peaceful border isn't immune to that logic anymore. Once one ally proves willing to pull that lever, others take note. And then the question isn't about one bridge. It's about how many other connections, economic, political, strategic, can be quietly held hostage in the future. So that's where we are right now, a nearly finished Canada-funded bridge sitting at the center of one of the most loaded geopolitical standoffs on the continent. A former central banker sending carefully crafted warnings to the most powerful office in the world. And one massive question hanging over all of it. When allies start weaponizing shared infrastructure, where does it end? If this bridge opens without obstruction, it's a win for cooperation. Proof that economic partnerships still hold even under pressure. But if it gets delayed, politicized, or leveraged as a bargaining chip, it sets a precedent. And precedents in geopolitics have a way of becoming the new normal very, very fast. That is the real story here. And I want to know, what do you think? Is Trump's move a smart negotiating tactic, or is it crossing a line that allies should never cross? Tell me in the comments right now. I read every single one, and this is the kind of debate I actually love having with you guys. And hey, if you made it this far and you're still not subscribed, now is literally the perfect time. Hit that subscribe button, smash the bell, and join the community here on Alexa Bliss TV, where we go deeper, think bigger, and connect the dots that most people miss. I'm Alexa Bliss. I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious and don't go anywhere.